Welcome again to the MyGuru online MAT classroom. Today we're going to take a look at a common analogy type called a degree analogy, where basically you have one term that is a lesser or greater degree than another. Now, as always, we're going to first work by identifying the pivot term based on the placement of the blank in the given term. So in this case, we could see that the blank is in term C, so that means that term B is going to be our pivot. Now, anytime you are working through your MAT analogies, always relate the term analogy from left to right to avoid unintentional reversals. So what that means is you want to say, as you're defining your relationship, and of course this time we know that our pivot is loathe, we want to say that dislike is a lesser form of loathe. And it's better than saying that loathe is a greater form of dislike, because it's just an easy way to make yourself get confused. And we know the confusion is how the MAT wins some of these battles in the first place. So you always want to go from left to right. So we know that the blank has to be a lesser form of deify. So you need to think about what the definitions here are. Dislike is, obviously to dislike, and loathe means to really dislike. So deify means to really do something. And if you don't know what it means, then you've just got to eliminate based on the idea that you can't have different degrees of some of these terms. So first, I've got to eliminate hate, because that is relating to dislike and loathe. So this is the wrong analogy. Then I'm probably going to eliminate angels, because that's the wrong part of speech. And you're not going to really be able to, you're not going to be able to have different degrees of angels, really, right? They're entities, so it doesn't make sense. And there is this idea overall on the exam that the parts of speech must be analogous as well. So in this case, since we've got dislike and loathe, we've got two different verbs. And since deify is also a verb, we know that this has to be a verb too. So that's just a secondary way to eliminate answer choices like angels, where you're just saying, well, that's a noun and it's a plural noun, has nothing to do with all these verbs that are obviously being related in this case. Now, the last thing you have to do, and in this case we probably get it down to a good 50-50, is determine whether you think deify is going to be a really extreme version of admire or condemn. And it's not an absolute here, but sometimes you can always consider positive negative if you're, in dire straits in terms of determining the exact value. You can always consider whether positive or negative, just as like a final way to evaluate. And in this case, it is actually two negatives to two positives. So it's admire is a lesser form of deify in this case.